You think AI is about chatbots, video generators, helping you write emails. In February 2026, OpenAI published this on its own website. Not a leak, not a rumor, their own words on their own domain. Our agreement with the Department of War. Until recently, Americans knew it as the Department of Defense. In September 2025, a presidential executive order restored its original name, the Department of War. 8 of the most powerful AI systems ever built, the same systems powering your email, your search, your work, now hold classified contracts with the United States military, without a press conference, without a Senate hearing, without a vote. And when those systems target the wrong person, international law has no answer for who is responsible. That is not a prediction, it is a documented legal reality. On May 1st, 2026, the United States Department of War officially cleared these 8 companies for access to its most classified intelligence tiers, IL6 and IL7. America's secret and top secret networks. These are not traditional defense contractors. These are the companies that run your email, store your photographs, power the software your children use in school, process your financial transactions. In a single announcement, reported by CNN, confirmed by OpenAI's own website, the line between civilian technology and military infrastructure was quietly erased. But to understand why this moment is different from every Pentagon contract that came before it, why this is not more of the same, you have to go back to where this story actually started. The year is 2003. Planning a single military mission requires 2,000 intelligence analysts, 2,000 human beings, cross-referencing databases, reading satellite imagery, building target maps by hand. Then a startup arrives. It is not funded by Silicon Valley venture capital. It is funded by In-Q-Tel, the CIA's own private investment arm. Its name, taken from the all-seeing stones in Tolkien's mythology, Palantir. Within a decade, Palantir had fundamentally changed how war was planned. A 2011 internal memo from the 82nd Airborne Division in Afghanistan, obtained and reported by independent journalists, stated it plainly. Analytical problems that had taken their intelligence teams several days to solve using existing military systems could be resolved in a few hours using Palantir. Not incremental improvement, a compression of days into hours, applied to targeting, applied to the decision of who is a threat and who is not. Its technology fuses satellite data, cell phone signals, financial records, surveillance feeds, and social media activity into a single unified intelligence picture. And from that picture, it generates recommendations. Target priorities, strike assessments. Defense analysts call the process the kill chain: find, fix, track, target, engage, assess. Palantir built the software that runs the first 4 steps, faster than any human team, at a scale no human team could match. Palantir's systems have been deployed in Iraq, Afghanistan, Ukraine, and dozens of classified operations. It is, in the words of those who study it, the operating system of modern war. For 20 years, Palantir was the known unknown. Powerful, secretive, controversial, but operating at the edges of public awareness. A chapter the world had quietly learned to live alongside. The May 2026 deal did not continue that chapter. It opened a completely new one. Palantir was one company, one product, a known controversial actor in a space the public had at least learned to name. What the Pentagon announced in May 2026 is not an extension of that story. It is a transformation of it. 8 of the most powerful AI systems ever built, systems that process civilian data for billions of people, simultaneously integrated into America's most classified military environments. The same networks that house targeting data, autonomous drone operations, and strategic surveillance. The Pentagon's stated goal is unambiguous. In January 2026, the Secretary of War signed a classified strategy directive ordering the department to become, quote, AI-first war-fighting force across all components from front to back. That document names 7 pace-setting projects, military AI programs with aggressive timelines and single accountable leaders. One of them, called Agent Network, is described in the Secretary's own words as AI agent development and experimentation for AI-enabled battle management and decision support, from campaign planning to kill chain execution. Kill chain execution. That phrase is not an analyst's description. It is the Pentagon's own language for what these systems are being built to do. A second project, Open Arsenal, defines its mission as turning intel into weapons in hours, not years. $13.4 billion. The Department of War's 2026 budget request for autonomous weapons systems alone. In April of this year, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs stated publicly that autonomous weapons are going to be, his words, a key and essential part of everything we do. This is not a pilot program, not a research initiative. The United States military has declared that the same artificial intelligence powering civilian life will now power its wars. Which brings us back to the question we raised at the beginning. When that AI makes a mistake, when it targets the wrong person, who is responsible? The rules governing human conflict, the 1949 Geneva Conventions, the additional protocols, international humanitarian law, were written for a world in which a human being made the decision to use lethal force. They are built on two foundational concepts: distinction, the ability to tell a combatant from a civilian, and proportionality, the judgment to weigh military advantage against civilian harm. These are not calculations. They are moral decisions. They require context, situational awareness, and what legal scholars describe as an understanding of human suffering. International legal scholars do not say the Geneva Conventions are obsolete. What they say is more precise and more disturbing. The conventions are technology neutral. They technically apply to any weapon, but they were written assuming a human being would pull the trigger, and they contain no provision, none, for what happens when the trigger is pulled by an algorithm. Legal experts, the International Committee of the Red Cross, and West Point's Lieber Institute all use the same term for what results. The accountability gap. When an AI system independently selects and strikes a target, who is legally responsible? The programmer who built a deep learning algorithm they themselves cannot fully explain? The commander who approved a target list generated faster than human reaction time? The corporation that sold the software? The state that purchased it? The answer, confirmed by the ICRC, Human Rights Watch, and the American Society of International Law, is no one. Accountability distributes across so many actors, across so many layers of code and command, that it effectively vanishes. And the institution at the center of this, the Department of War itself, has answered the accountability question in its own strategy document. In January 2026, the Secretary of War directed the entire department to internalize one principle above all others. His words, "We must accept that the risks of not moving fast enough outweigh the risks of imperfect alignment." The risks of imperfect alignment. That is the official term for what happens when an AI system kills the wrong person. And the Secretary of War has determined, in writing, that those risks are acceptable. That speed matters more. We have documented evidence of what this looks like in practice. In one of the most thoroughly investigated cases of AI-assisted warfare, journalists obtained intelligence on a targeting system that generated a list of 37,000 individuals for potential military action. The system had a documented 10% error rate. Military commanders were informed of that error rate. They approved the targets anyway. When strikes were carried out on the wrong people, no individual, no programmer, no commander, no corporation could be held legally accountable. The machine had recommended. A human had rubber stamped in seconds, and the law had no mechanism to assign clear responsibility to either. This is not a hypothetical scenario. It is a documented operational reality, reported and verified by independent journalists and legal analysts. And buried in international humanitarian law, there is one last safeguard. The Martens Clause, established in 1899, states that even when no specific law exists, human beings remain protected by the principles of humanity and the dictates of public conscience. It assumes that the entity making life and death decisions has a conscience. An autonomous weapons system does not. To a machine, a human being is not a life. It is a heat signature, a cluster of pixels, a data point that either matches a target profile or does not. The Martin's Clause was written for a world of human warriors. It has no answer for a world of algorithms. Which brings us to the most revealing detail in the entire May 2026 story. One company was not on the Pentagon's approved list. Anthropic, the company behind Claude, one of the world's most capable AI systems, used by millions of professionals, researchers, and businesses, was deliberately excluded from the agreement, reported by CNN, not denied by the Pentagon or Anthropic. Not because its technology was insufficient, because Anthropic made a single demand: that any military use of its AI include meaningful human oversight before lethal decisions are executed. That a human being remain in the decision chain when the consequence is someone's death. That condition made them incompatible with the W's own strategy. The January 2026 directive signed by the Secretary of War is explicit. The department will only contract AI models that are, in his words, free from usage policy constraints that may limit lawful military applications. It further directs that all future AI contracts must include standard any lawful use language, meaning no company may place conditions on how the military deploys their technology. Anthropic's human oversight requirement is exactly such a usage policy constraint. The document doesn't name them. It doesn't need to. The requirement eliminates them by definition. The Trump administration excluded them for it. Anthropic's exclusion is not a story about one company's principles. It is a document. When the Pentagon excluded the one company that demanded human oversight, it wrote down, in a strategy directive signed by the Secretary of War, exactly what it wanted. AI systems capable of lethal action without human constraints. Not by accident, not by oversight, by explicit, deliberate design. And that choice answers a question that Washington has never answered in public debate. The question is not whether the United States military wants AI systems that can kill without a human in the loop. We now know that it does. The question Anthropic's absence forces us to ask is not about Anthropic. It is about the 8 who said yes, and the institution that asked them to. OpenAI, the company that signed, stated publicly that its agreement prohibits using its technology to direct autonomous weapons systems. The Department of War's own strategy document, signed the same month by the Secretary of War, describes a program built specifically for AI-enabled, his words, kill chain execution. Both statements are public, both are in writing. Draw your own conclusions. More than 120 countries, alongside the United Nations Secretary General, have called for a binding international treaty on autonomous weapons systems. The 2026 deadline for that treaty is almost certain to fail. The United States, China, and Russia, the 3 powers most invested in the autonomous weapons race, are all actively resisting binding international restrictions. Each claims it will maintain, quote, meaningful human control. But in a high-tempo conflict where AI systems process thousands of potential targets per minute, human control becomes something far closer to a ceremonial approval, a rubber stamp on decisions already made by machines operating at speeds no human can match. In 2025, the last executive order governing safe AI development in the United States, the order requiring human oversight in high-stakes AI applications, was rescinded. The architecture is being built. The systems are being trained. The contracts are signed. The mechanism to stop this exists. The United Nations General Assembly has the authority to call a binding vote on a treaty governing lethal autonomous weapons systems. A coalition of over 180 NGOs, led by the Campaign to Stop Killer Robots, has formally demanded that vote. The governments that support a treaty have the numbers. What they do not yet have is the political pressure to force a vote that the 3 largest military powers are actively working to prevent. And the window to make different choices is closing. The future of warfare is not coming. It is already compiled. It is waiting for the signal. The decision about what kind of future that will be, who lives, who dies, who is held accountable, was not made in a democratic chamber. It was made in a procurement office. And it was announced quietly, without ceremony. This is next signal. The systems are learning. Make sure you are too. If this transmission reached you, share it. The future only changes when enough people understand what's being built inside it.